All right. So again, you're going to be watching a video, a TED Talk, Mr. Pistorius. There will be questions in the email announcement for you to consider as you are watching that video, and we will use it to talk about at our next class. Okay. Your first journal is due on the 20th, and remember you're going to do either A or B. And we're going to talk about the topics that are due, and those are pertaining to your term project. So we're going to be going through that, and you know what to expect for that. And remember your test, the final opportunity to take your test is on October 4th. That will close our module. That'll take us into our fall break, and then we'll finish up when we come back. All right, so to start off, I want to talk about how in the world do you identify who is the person or the group of people that you want to research for your term project, all right? So in your course, and I recommend that you all pull up your COM 120 course, go to Module 1 toward the bottom part of Module 1 where it says the term project. And all of what I'm going to be talking about, you can also access there and look at on your own. So it'll be a repeat or a review of what we're going to talk about here, and or you can look at this video as well, all right? But if you want more details, look at those additional resources. Now, some of you may be wondering, why are we doing this project? And we're doing this because as a Global Scholars course, and as a course that is required for those of you in a very specific career programs, there is not only a desire, but there is a requirement for you to be able to interact with people who are different from you. And in the world of communication studies, that is called the other. Whoever is different from you culturally, could be language, religion, point of view, political party, where you were born, nationality. It could be all kinds of different things. So as a requirement to be able to interact with people who are different from you, what we have to do is to step back and also find what are the similarities that you have, right? And so that's what our project is going to do. What I want you to think about is where in the world you might be interested in learning more about those people. And you want to learn more about those people who appear either through media or your research or your studies and other courses, just have a very different way of living, a different way of speaking, a different way of thinking, a different way of believing, different way of acting. All those things are so unusual to you or so different from you that you are concerned about having an interaction with them if and when you do come into contact. I also want you to be thinking about your own personal careers. If any of you are going to be enlisting, you're going to be traveling outside the United States, you are, as part of your job, such as in aviation, or if you are going to, be an auto technician and you are invited to go to Japan or South Korea or Germany or Sweden to work for any of those motor companies. Either, it doesn't matter if it's in automotive or it's in some other kind of technology. How are you going to interact with those people so that you do not become what's known as the ugly American? All right. So let's first define that, because this is something that you don't want to be. All right, so we're going to put that way over here. The ugly American actually refers to a very famous book that was written back in the late 50s, 60s that talked about the ethnocentric way of behaving when interacting with the other. All right. Now, ethnocentric. If we divide those two words in half, you can see what they mean. It means that your own, this is you, your ethno, okay? Your culture is the center of your universe. And by it being the center of your universe, it's what you know. And because you have not had a lot of interactions with people outside of that culture, you might have a tendency to think that your culture is best. And so what happens is you do a judgment of anybody who is different, the other, all right? And the label comes across people coming from America trying to go to other countries and trying to impose our way of life on others, when oftentimes it does indeed help that country or that individual or a community, while at other times it may do more harm than good. And that harm can be what is perceived as the ugly American. Now, let me give you an example. If any of you are in agricultural studies or you're looking to go into chemistry or some of those areas, there are some genetically manufactured products that also genetically modified products such as seeds, animals, but also particularly plants that have been taken to Africa, and they have been introduced into the African different countries, and by doing so, they brought a lot of things that were not wanted. All right. Some of those things might be the need for an infesticide, some type of a chemical. Dow Chemical is oftentimes accused of being the ugly American, saying that the chemically based products and elements that are brought into those countries, yes, they may help to yield good crops and therefore food for people, but they may also be including cancer producing things that go along with it, or elements that will hurt the soil or harm it for good, or what have you. So it's where the pros and cons are not weighed evenly, and as a result, the impositioning, the imposing of one way as being better than the other without really analyzing the other to find out what is truly needed could be harmful. Now, there's no doubt it can also be helpful. There's no doubt that our science in America can be extremely valuable and extremely helpful, and we are also learning from others as well. So it's not to say that I am not pro-American, because I am pro-American, but I just want us to recognize that it can have an ugly side to it. With that in mind, then, what I want you to recognize is this thing called culture. And many of you have studied culture in different courses. Maybe you've taken archaeology or anthropology or psychology or sociology, and these classes, even biology, have introduced what is culture. And I'm going to introduce to you and give you definition and parameters of what culture means to those of us who study in communication, all right? So the first thing you need to see is how we define it. And communication scholars define culture as the way, so let me explain that. The way we do, say, think, and feel around here. So around here, the people who live there are the we, those are the people. They have a method or a style of how they interact and how they behave and how they think and how they feel and how they love, how they hate, and all those things. All right. But we, as communication scholars, we're going to be specifically looking at what people say, those building blocks of words, all right, what they do, the nonverbal communication as well as the verbal communication, how they think and create their reality based on the building blocks of those words and the nonverbal, and therefore how they feel. So when those are brought into play, you have what we call in communication studies culture. But there are 3 areas that we dive into to really hone in on more specifics about this. The first one, and everything in communication studies pretty much is on a continuum, with neutrality being in the center and moving out of the neutrality into one particular point of being, right? And as you can imagine, on the left, there tends to be what is known as the liberal thinkers, the liberal doers, the liberal feelers, blah, blah. And the left liberal means that there is a high respect for independence, for individuality, for freedoms, liberation, etc. All right? And on the right, all right, is where we typically consider conservative. Now, this is communication studies. And with that is the need to conserve or protect. All right, protect the values, protect the things that have served the company or the country or the community well. These are things that are created to protect, all right, those civil liberties at some point, but also just to make sure that things are preserved. Okay, so there's conserve and preserve. They're all pretty darn good, aren't they? So both sides of the spectrum are extremely valuable. And on our first axis right here, what we're going to do is identify it with what is known as attitudes. And an attitude is what is okay and not okay around here. All right? And what is okay, depending on where it falls on the continuum, all right, is going to be a positioning of where that person is perceived as having a camp, so to speak. Now, an attitude is important. And when you start to take a look at the different kinds of people in the world, and you want to try and understand, let's say you have a country, you're going to be doing some service work for a company that is going to send you to Saudi Arabia. And you are a little nervous about going there because there are different attitudes toward women there. And you're even hesitant to take your significant other who happens to be female because of how they're going to treat this person. And as a consequence, you could decide to turn down the job, or you could decide to go by yourself for whatever time frame it is. You're usually paid very well for those kinds of contract work. Or you decide to bite the bullet and you and your significant other go together. All right. So what you will want to do is to learn what are the stages of culture shock. So we're going to put culture shock here. What are going to be some things toward how they do these things toward your significant other that could enable or help her to feel more comfortable remaining in Saudi Arabia? All right, is she going to have to cover her hair? Is she going to have to only wear long pants or long skirts? In long sleeves? Is she going to need to, in certain areas, even hide her face? Will she be expected to follow you rather than walk side by side? Will she be allowed to speak, or will she be expected to not say anything? Right? So attitudes, those are all what we're talking about are attitudes. What are okay behaviors and what are not okay based on how we, the people in Saudi Arabia, do things. Okay? And so you're curious and you want to learn more because Ms. K says that there are similarities as well as differences. So what in the world are some of the similarities? And there are many. So don't think they're not, because there are wonderful similarities as well as differences. All right, the next one is what we're going to talk about. It's known as beliefs. And beliefs, again, on the continuum, going in different, all right, polarities. A belief is what is believed without proof. All right. Oftentimes, things like, is there a God? Or are there gods? It would be belief. Climate change, ironically, is in this category right now. Some people who might be very much might be, wanting to conserve and protect the environment might see, yes, we got to protect it. And so they might be way over here saying we've got to do something about it. And here's where the liberal and conservative gets a little bit crazy. But then there might be some people over here who have the label conservative, but they're thinking, oh, come on, we've got resources forever. The climate is not changing. That science is a bunch of bunk, and it's just designed to do blah, blah, blah. All right? So that, all right, could be a belief. Do you believe in climate change or not? Do you believe in scientific data, or do you believe scientific data is part of a conspiracy theory? It's all a part of attitudes and beliefs. Okay? Woo! All right, this is culture. This is culture. Now the last one is what's referred to as values. Again, we have a zero going in both directions. All right, and a value is what willing to die for. All right, you value it more than your life. If any of you happen to be parents, oftentimes this is a great example. You would die to protect your children. You would possibly die to protect a significant other. Some of you, value and have such a strong belief in a God that you are willing to be a martyr and to die for your faith, your religion, right? All of those are elements of what we look at as being similar or different in other cultures. And so as I'm going through this list, I bet there's a lot of ideas that come up to in your mind in terms of you're curious and you want to know. And you want to do the comparison between your culture and their culture, especially by looking at this. Okay? Your project then is to meet the other. And you're going to meet the other that you choose by getting to know them. And you're going to do that by finding a reputable, legitimate, research-based, fact-based video about the other. You're also going to do some amazing research that's not just going to be Googled. Some could be, some will not be. Some of it can be reporting, it can be articles that's based on anthropological studies, as well as sociological studies or communication studies. Communication studies would be the best, right? And what you will analyze is the data and dig deep to find your differences and your similarities. But you're going to do that by looking at interpersonal communication. Wait for it. That's what we've been talking about. Terms, theories, and practices. So, culture shock is a theory that's used in communication studies. And culture shock theory states that when a person encounters a culture that is extremely different from their own, they are going to go through a series of adjustment steps. The first one is going to be like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Right? And then it slowly progresses into some other steps that are going to be, okay, I'm here. I'm all right. This is kind of cool, and I like it. Right? So this would be an example of probably everybody in the class should be using that IPC term. All right. Okay. So I'd like to. You are also, as part of the process, going to select 2 classmates to read a term paper that is written from the research, and you're going to write a reaction paper about it. Here is the process flow. The first step in the process is for you to submit 3 topics and so 3 topics, each one needs to be in a paragraph, and I'm going to go through the specifics of things that you will need to include, such as where are the people from, who are the people you want to study, why do you care, why is it important to you to learn more about them, all right, and what IPC theories you're going to be using to research and better understand. Okay. That is due on the 27th. Okay. And basically it's going to be a piece of paper. You're going to submit one piece of paper, maybe 1.5. You're going to have your name at the top. And this is an example of a paragraph. This is another paragraph. And this is a third paragraph. And you're going to write them in order of preference. So your first number one that you really, really, really want to have approved will be listed on top. If you can't get this one, then you really, 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 really want this one. And if you can't get that one, then you really want the third. These are going to be approved on a first come, basically first requested, first paper submitted basis. And so if your paper is submitted like today, and it could be, and you have done all of these in each of these paragraphs, and you have followed the processes, then I will have a date and a time stamp of when you submitted that, and you will get top priority for a first choice. All right. From there, you are going to do research. Now, the research is not going to be that hard. You need a minimum of 5 sources that pass the CRAP test. The information is current, relevant, accurate, authoritative, and it is for positive purpose. So it can't just be a random blogger. Right? Included in that research, so remember I said there's 5. You will for sure include your textbook as a source. So you're going to pull information from the textbook and you're going to be using that, right? Another is going to be the video that you are going to select. So you need to find a TED Talk, a National Geographic, a news story, a documentary, a video for another course or what have you. And that's going to be a source of information. And you may have a couple of videos. If documentaries is something you really like to watch, and if they're past the CRAP test, then you can use more than one. But you have to have at least one video. All right, so a textbook and a video. And then, let's see, what was the other one? Oh, no, that's it. So this is 1, and this is 2. And if you have to have a minimum of 5, then you need to find 3 more. The better papers, though, will probably have up to 7. That'll be a higher graded paper. Okay. So this is going to be presented to me in Module 3, and you're going to do it through an annotated bibliography. So you're going to write a paragraph about each one of your sources. And in that paragraph, you are going to give me the citation in APA format. And you're going to write 3, 4, or 5 sentences about that article or video or newscast or whatever, textbook section, and explain how that information is going to help you write your paper. Right? So that's the next thing you're going to be doing. From there, if your video is approved, it's okay, then you don't have to do anything else. If this video is not approved, and I'm going to be watching every one of them, then you will need to resubmit another video for approval. From there, you're going to write a term paper. And that needs to be 3 to 5 pages, double spaced, 1-inch margin, again using APA format. You can do a really, really, really good term paper in 3 pages. Now, obviously, that does not include your list of references. But you can do a good term paper in 3 pages. 5 is the max. Do not give me more than 5 pages, or your classmates either. All right. From there, you're going to upload those into Moodle for all of your classmates to read, and you're going to include in here the URL to the video for your classmates to watch. So at that point then, you, each individual, each student in the class is going to select 2 term papers and videos to watch and read, and you are going to write a 1-page summary. It's basically a reaction paper to what your classmates wrote, right? And no more than 1 page. And you're going to submit that only to me. It will not go to the classmate. And what I'm going to be looking for is, of course, connections and extensions. If you can even connect and extend what you've got here, what your classmate has written to what you wrote personally, that can make it even that much more meaningful, right? So that way you are really, again, incorporating the information, processing it, and making it your own, okay? So that's our process. We're going to not wait until the end of the semester to do this. We're going to be doing this every step of the way, which will make this whole process much more meaningful and easier. All right. So what are some examples of topics? I'm going to give you a few. All right. So I gave you an example in Saudi Arabia. Here is an example of a student who did one, again, who picked a country outside the United States, and the person was looking at Turkey. And specifically, this student, who was one of our basketball players on our campus, wanted to look at the basketball players in the league in Turkey, because the person knows won't be good enough to be in the United States NBA, has looked at Europe programs, pro, and there's some in South America, but was also interested in the pro teams in leagues in Turkey because they tend to make more money, and was interested of what would it be like if he was recruited, and what would be his culture shocks that he would experience, and what would he want to learn. All right, so he gave that as one of his. Another student was dating a woman whose parents were Japanese. And the parents, as well as the girlfriend, were born here in the United States. But the grandparents were not. The grandparents were born in Japan. And he was going to be, he was going back to meet the grandparents who moved back to Japan for retirement. And so he was going to meet the grandparents of an important person he was about to marry. Let's see. Well, this kind of gives you an idea. There's the classic of a person is becoming a mechanic and is particularly interested in operating on foreign cars and knows that here in North Carolina there's a huge Volvo manufacturing unit, and it does a lot with the big Volvo engines for airplanes and also trucks and those kinds of things. And so this person was really interested in looking at Sweden, and in particular wanted to look at the employees, okay, who work on the assembly line. All right, because there was an expectation, as he saw in his future, that he might be invited over to work there and be able to supervise employees who work assembly line. Okay. So in each one of these, you can see there is a type of a focus. This one, the person is looking at career clearly. How in the world would this person work and be a leader, all right, with people who would report to him who come from another part of the world? This one clearly was romantic, but it was also family communication. So he wanted to protect his relationship with his significant other, so we had to look at romantic communication. We also need to look at family rules, family communication, particularly in a country that's very foreign from the United States. And this person was looking to not do a career short-term assignment, but this person was looking to move and live forever and ever in Turkey and wanted to know what it would be like. And so this person was really looking at laws, the values, and was really concerned about even some dating and those kinds of things. So these are IPC theories. So when we take a look at what you're trying to achieve, you're trying to capture what are the IPC theories that you're going to be using. So I've given you some to think about. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. When you are looking at your Moodle page, you'll see that there are, in that section that I told you, an example of a PowerPoint with very detailed information. And one of the elements is specifically how you will be graded on the topics that you submit. So pay attention to grammar, to spelling, to punctuation, capitalization, etc. Make sure that you do double space, or at least 1.5 space, so it's easy for me to read. Be sure that your name is on the page. And if you want to send me a sample paragraph of one that you really are thinking about doing, send it to me in an email and I'll say yes, or no, you still need to add that and that kind of thing. What people most of the time forget when doing their topic proposals is your IPC theories. What IPC theories do you want to look at? And that's going to require you to look at the table of contents or skimming and scanning all the way through your textbook to start to look for some of the information in there. Okay? All right. I'm going to come back over here and look at my audience who have been trying to stay awake. And do we have any questions? Is this clear as mud? All right. Well, you all are a wonderful audience. You're free to go. And give me some patience with the grading, and I will see you next week.